to the official podcast of FCS Fans Nation with your hosts Kylor Neal, Matthew Frazee, and Jamie Williams.
FCS Fans Nation, here we go. It is mock FCS playoff bracket time. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live all over the internet. Thank you so much for joining us, as today the FCS Fans Nation podcast is coming to you, special edition, a mock FCS playoff bracket. 123 teams, you guys, started this journey in the fall. It's time to take it down to 24. It's time to end the season for 99 FCS squads. Hopefully my math is correct. Jamie Williams, Kylor Neal, joining your unbiased Bison admin, Matthew Frazee, live on Facebook, YouTube, and of course, Twitter. This will play on replay on our FCS Fans Nation podcast platforms. But thank you so much to everybody joining us right now. We have some amazing members already starting to comment and come in. So if you normally listen to this on our normal podcast platforms, maybe check it out on YouTube this week if you're catching this replay, because we are about to build the FCS playoff bracket. We are including Word documents and screenshots and a HQ bracket builder platform. So this is going to be pretty flippin' awesome. Jamie Williams, stats voter, awesome man, awesome individual. How are you this Sunday late afternoon as we prepare for bracket madness, my man?
I am great. I'm great this afternoon. Good day of football yesterday. A little bit of chaos. Interesting. I haven't seen any South Dakota State fans yet. Interesting.
Some hearts broken.
Yeah, heartbroken. Was at the JMU William and Mary game yesterday. Didn't think we played our best, but a win's a win. But I got to, yell out CAA sucks as it got really quiet. So, CAA can bite me. But ready to talk about the bracket and the rest of the teams. So let's roll.
Awesome. Let's get it rolling, guys. Normally we talk about questions and other things for some of our fans, which are great, but today is specifically building the FCS playoff bracket. Okay, let's start with some disclaimers. So for the people already tuning in, I will repeat this a lot, but listen up. Here we go. When it comes to building this bracket, we are not looking for pinpoint accuracy of what's going to happen on Selection Sunday in terms of the teams, right? Because upsets are going to happen. Things are going to change in terms of records and how the games play out next week. However, the main goal of this is to kind of wrap everyone's heads around about the 30 teams we believe right now could be looking into the playoffs, learn about their strength of schedule, learn about who they are, learn about the reasons why they could be seeds, why they couldn't. Think about how the committee actually operates and kind of how they view things. So that's the main reason behind this episode, and we're excited to get it going. So with that, guys, let's build an FCS playoff bracket for this year. Let's see who's in and who is out. Okay, guys, we're going to keep it very simple. We are not going to predict every big game that needs to be decided for next week. But of course, we need to know the results to have a full picture of the teams that should be eligible for the playoff field. So we are just going to start very simply by showing you the games we are not going to predict for next Saturday to set up the field. Okay, so no predictions are going to be needed here. For us, these are just going to be teams and matchups we feel should just go simply. Now, of course, there could be an upset, but I'm just going to read off the list easily here. We are going to predict that Sacred Heart's going to beat LIU to win the Northeast Conference at 8-3. We think that Holy Cross is going to beat Bucknell to be 9-2. Davidson wins that Pioneer League at 8-2. FAMU, we think they're going to finish 9-2 and beat Bethune-Cookman next week. UT Martin, who's already had a great season, we think they beat SEMO to finish 10-1. Sam Houston, obviously a team people love, should finish at 10-0. Last few ones here, guys. Rhode Island's going to finish 8-3. We have South Dakota State beating UND. SIU beating Youngstown to be 8-3. James Madison finishing 10-1. William and Mary gets to 7-4. Chattanooga will beat the Citadel to get to 7-4. Missouri State will beat Dixie State to get to 8-3. And then finishing this out, CLA, Stephen F. Austin, Eastern Washington, Incarnate Word, and VMI all get victories to get to their variety of records, which make them eligible for the playoff field. So I'm not going to read the whole list in depth, guys, but if you're watching this on YouTube, those are the games we're just going to assume, okay? That's going to help us build up what we're about to do. But there are some games, and there's about 8 of them, that we do need to predict because they're too close to call. Because without properly predicting those games, we're not going to know who's actually going to be eligible for the playoffs. So let's kick that off right away, guys. What we're going to start with is just predicting the big matchups that are happening next Saturday to officially get the records of teams that we know. So let's start off right away with the first big matchup of next weekend, the Brawl of the Wild. That would be Montana State at Montana. We will go in order here, guys, of picks. We'll just start with you, Kylor. You're our Big Sky kind of expert. So give us your prediction on Montana State at Montana. Who's the victor there to set up what could be a Big Sky title for Montana State?
I mean, guys, if you have no other games to watch, this is a game to watch for one. This is going to be a really good defensive battle. I think both of these teams' strengths are the defense. I think it's going to be a low-scoring affair, to be honest. But this is a game where these two teams hate each other. I have to lean towards, I think Montana State overall is better across the board. I think they're a slightly more they're not a more aggressive defense. I think Montana, with their blitz, they are extremely aggressive, but Montana State's defensive balance is better. And then I trust their offense a little bit more than Montana's. You know, right now, Afonso for Montana State is an absolute beast. He's murdering teams. He's just right behind, Pure Strong, basically, in the FCS in terms of rushing. So I like Montana State's chances to beat Montana. I don't think it's an upset, but it's going to be a really good game. But yeah, I'm leaning towards Montana State in this one to win and then win the auto bid.
All right, Montana State victorious then to finish the season 10-1 as they win the Brawl of the Wild, and they win because of some tiebreakers with Sacramento State. If Sacramento State wins, Montana State would win the Big Sky title. They would share it, but they would get the auto bid. So moving on to that next game, Sacramento State at UC Davis. Why don't we just keep this one right with you, Kylor, if you don't mind. You're a Big Sky guy. So Sacramento State at UC Davis. Why don't you give us your thoughts on that game and who's going to be the victor in this one?
Again, this is one of those games where this is a tough pick. Like, if you are trying to rely on me to place your bets, do not rely on me for this one. This is another game that can go either way. It's a Causeway Classic. It's technically at UC Davis, but they're only, 8 miles apart, maybe 10 miles apart. I have no clue, but it's really close. There's not going to be a home field advantage for this game. What I trust more right now, Sacramento State, yes, they're using 2 quarterbacks. Normally you hear the reference, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have 0. That is just not the case with Sacramento State. After they had that UNI debacle, they basically said, Asher O'Hara, you are not going to be a throwing quarterback anymore. We are only using you for basically running plays, and Dunaway is absolutely torching people in the air. I trust them over right now UC Davis's backup quarterback, who we just saw play Eastern Washington. I'm leaning towards Sacramento State. This is about as good as a pick'em game as you can imagine, but I do think Sacramento State wins, and then that makes them 8-0 in the Big Sky.
All right, Sacramento State and Montana State. If they both win, guys, they would share the Big Sky title, and Montana State would technically be the auto bid because it would go all the way down to tiebreakers to the Sargani ratings. It's pretty crazy. All right, Mr. Jamie Williams, I'm going to give you this next one, man. Monmouth at Kennesaw State. This one is huge for the bracket and for the implications before we start building this thing, because this will be the winner and the auto bid for the Big South. And one team might actually be left out if they don't win it. So, Jamie, what do you think, man? Monmouth traveling to Kennesaw. Who gets that victory?
So you look at this game, and it's in Kennesaw, and Kennesaw only has the one loss to Georgia Tech. I believe it's Georgia Tech. But Monmouth's been playing some good football as well. So when I go to decide who's going to win this game, I always talk about the transitive property doesn't work. But when you can look at a bunch of common opponents and you have results against 3 or 4 different teams, it can help you make a decision. And when I look at these two teams against a lot of their common opponents in the conference, Gardner Webb, Hampton, A&T, Monmouth is beating the teams a little bit more significantly. I like Monmouth's balanced offense a lot better than I like what Kennesaw's doing, although Xavier Shepard has done a great job. but I'm going to go ahead and take Monmouth to pull a minor upset here and win the Big South. Might not be a popular pick with a lot of our watchers, but I think that Monmouth will be the team that will win the Big South.
All right. Monmouth playing a little bit of spoiler, which will put Monmouth into the field. Congratulations to them, the Big South champs. And Kennesaw State then now looking at an at-large bid with one of their losses here to Monmouth. So, okay, I guess, guys, I will take Eastern Kentucky at Jacksonville State. Love Bruce and Bob and those JSU fans. But Jacksonville State has played an extremely tough strength of schedule. They've been inconsistent a little bit. Eastern Kentucky, they had a hot start. They've ran into their tougher competition now, and it's been tough for them. I think this game's going to be very, very close, but I'm going to give the slight edge to Eastern Kentucky, and I'm going to give EKU the win to be in a position to be looking into the playoffs, of course, at an at-large possibility for that AQ7. So I'm sorry to my Stay Cocky Gamecock fans. I'm going to give Eastern Kentucky the edge. Guys, we are loving the road teams right now as we just keep picking them left and right. So maybe we'll see a home team win one of these eventually. But Jamie, is that going to start with Delaware, or do you see Villanova continuing to roll into possibly look into a seeding position?
This is a big rivalry game, the Battle of the Blue. There's a trophy on the line and everything, and it's usually a very tightly contested game. But with Delaware being down Nolan Henderson, I've said it all year, Zach Gwynn's not good enough to carry this team over any of the good teams. You saw them get blown out by Richmond yesterday. Villanova seems to kind of be rolling. I don't see that changing now. So Villanova wins, probably locks themselves into a seed, and will win the tiebreaker and become the CAA champions in tiebreaker over James Madison, who they beat by 1 point a few weeks ago.
Okay, so Villanova becoming the victor over Delaware, and congratulations to Villanova then winning the CAA with the tiebreaker advantage over James Madison. They are in the field, but will they be seated? That's a question we're going to figure out as this episode continues. Very, very exciting. So if you don't mind, Jamie, actually, you know what? I'll take this one here. Mercer at East Tennessee State. You know what? No, Jamie, take this one because you have been the SoCon man this entire podcast all fall. Give me some love for Mercer at ETSU. This is a huge matchup. The winner wins the conference, gets in the playoff field. The SoCon's been very competitive. Kick it, my man. Who do you think wins this one?
This is going to be a really good game. Both teams really want to run the ball. Mercer has to win this game, unfortunately, to get in. If they lose, I don't think they're going to have enough to get in. But 2 is better than 1, and Jacob Sailors and Quay Holmes are 2 of the best backs in the entire FCS. With apologies to Pierre Strong and Isaiah Davis, they may be the best 2-back pair in the entire FCS. East Tennessee State, I think, wins this game, and I'm not sure it's that close. They win the SoCon this year, and will they be a seed?
Crazy stuff. ETSU, heck of a year. This will put them at 10-1, an FBS upset win. So ETSU wins their conference. And we come down to the final game here, which has become insane because of the insane last-second throw by the Coyotes. So this game really matters because, Kylor, we're going to either see NDSU win the Valley outright, or we're going to see a shared title between SIU, NDSU, Missouri State, South Dakota. I mean, it's just going to be all over the place. Is it going to be simple, Kylor, with North Dakota State winning, or South Dakota State going to cause some chaos here on Saturday?
Oh man, I would love South Dakota to cause some chaos. Like, this is my dream. I'm putting all my money down. I am not putting any money down, guys. This is one of those things. North Dakota State, their offense still does not look like it's super dominant, but their defense is so incredible. I don't think South Dakota is going to have this crazy Hail Mary play where, none of North Dakota State's guys are defending him. I think if it comes down to something like that, the ball's not getting to the wide receivers' hands from South Dakota. So I'm taking NDSU to win the Valley outright. I think that's probably one of the safest picks in this list. But yeah, that's where I'm going. I would love the Coyotes to win. Unfortunately, the Coyotes are going to look like Chihuahuas in this matchup.
Ooh, Chihuahuas. Okay. They still should have a pretty good shot at making the field, as we're about to find out. But guys, here's the best thing that we just got a hold of is we now have a full picture because of the games we project to go a certain way. And we now have the big games locked in terms of how we can set up this bracket. So imagine it's Saturday evening, everybody. The games are over. finally those West Coast games are done. We have a full idea of what's going on, and now it's time to predict the playoff field. So we're feeling pretty confident in what we have. And what we're pulling up here now, guys, if you are watching on YouTube, is going to be kind of our format of what we're looking at and what we're actually going to use to figure out who's in and to figure out who is out. So, Kylor, right now, do you feel like there should be more than the 30 teams I'm about to pop up here, or do you feel like these are kind of the 30 we should be looking at even into next Sunday?
What's crazy is I am probably the biggest advocate on reducing the playoff field out of all of us admins. I'm one of the guys who has been on paper saying I wish we had 16 teams because I don't ever think 24 teams are deserving. This is the first year in a long time. There's actually 24 plus teams that are deserving to actually be in this playoff field. So I actually like all of the 30 teams you included. I think those are probably the only teams that really have a decent shot at making the playoffs. I know you left off a couple teams like a Jacksonville State that's been mentioned in the comments. I'm with you on this one. I don't think with 5 losses you are in the playoffs. So I think you did a fantastic job kind of putting the list of the 30 teams together. I think there are 30 probably deserving teams to actually be in the postseason. I have no qualms. No qualms, man.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the support. We might not get the same from the fans, and that's okay, guys. Disagreement is good. Question your own thought process. Okay, so let's do a quick recap of who's in the playoffs now. So we're the committee, and we're looking at the picture, and we see the auto bid. So the auto bids are set. There are 11 auto bids this year for the conference champions that get automatic bids into the playoff field. From your AQ7, you have Sam Houston. Congratulations to the undefeated Bearcats. Out of the Big Sky with a win over the Grizz, Montana State. Congrats, you are the Big Sky champs. The Big South, Jamie has called an upset at the end. Monmouth, with a worse record than Kennesaw, better conference record, wins the Big South. Villanova, by beating JMU by 1 point, wins the CAA. The Missouri Valley goes to North Dakota State. The Northeast Conference, Sacred Heart wins that one. UT Martin, 10-1 UT Martin, based off of our predictions, wins the OVC. The Patriot goes to Holy Cross. They have just dominated in the Patriot League, so kudos to Holy Cross on another great season. The Pioneer goes to Davidson. Steph Curry is very excited. SoCon goes to ETSU, who's been a really fun team this year. And finally, the Southland. University of Incarnate Word. University I would drive by all the time when I was in San Antonio for military training. Of all the things, University of Incarnate Word. Good for them. They've had a great year. So there you go. They are in the field. That doesn't guarantee them a seed, but it puts them in the playoffs. And as you guys can see live on our YouTube screen, we now have some remaining teams that are not in/left out. And I have broke them down in terms of what conference they're from. And how this is going to work, guys, is the next part of our podcast is actually us discussing who will be the remaining 13 at-large teams. Now, how do we get down to this? We're going to go in between each other. So for the first pick, Mr. Kylor, he is going to get the final say. For the second pick, Jamie's going to get the final say. Then I get a final say. So we each get 4 final says on who's in. And because Kylor leads the Pick'em Challenge for the podcast, he gets the 13th and final pick, which personally I'm okay with because I don't want to make that final call. Kylor can take all the heat. So, all right, guys, let's do it. So now it's just committee discussion. This is not sort of like your turn, Kylor, your turn, Jamie. This could get heated because now it's time to pick the best teams. So Kylor, you're the first to put somebody up and we'll discuss them. It's up to you, my man. Who do you think should be the first at large to join the current 11 teams?
Well, I think this is a pretty easy pick since, you had Villanova winning the CA in this one. We're going to go with the next highest ranked team that is not an actual bid. James Madison, they're already a lock for the playoffs. I think this is the easiest pick anyone can make. James Madison, you're the number one team off the board.
Of course, you're not going to find any sort of backlash from me. Jamie, as easy as it comes right here for James Madison entering the field.
Yeah, I think so. 10-1, 4 wins at the time on the road of ranked teams. So, they don't all wind up ranked at the end of the year. Might wind up with none ranked at the end of the season. But 10-1 in that conference with that kind of dominating wins in most places. I think that's a simple one. Go Dukes.
Go Deeks. All right, so James Madison is our first team in. We now have 12 teams into the field. Congratulations to the Dukes on a 10-1 season. I love this. I'm not sure who you are because you haven't logged in, but Facebook user, how deep can you dive until you run out of oxygen? Look at that.
It's a Big Sky Podcast Network guy. That's all I know.
Oh, good for them. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We're up over 50 viewers right now. We hope to keep having people come on. This is a really fun episode. So there you go, guys. James Madison is in the field. So now, Jamie, it's up to you to put up a team you believe should enter. And you're either going to get our full support or we're going to tell you that you stink and that you got to pick somebody else. So what do you got, my man?
Okay, well, I don't think I'm going to stink on this one. Same logic Kylor just used. So Montana State will be unbeaten in the Big Sky. We've already given them that title. The team that had to go as a tiebreaker and down to the Sagarin ratings, 8-0 in the Big Sky. You can't leave out Sacramento State.
Sacramento State. And what is their strength of schedule sitting at currently? Guys, what we do have pulled up here for you is what we're looking at right now. We're looking at quality wins, and we're looking at quality wins based off the current top 25 or teams that are, over that 500 mark. We're not going to use, there's a lot of debates and with the committee of what, they use quality wins at the time they played. We kind of think that's bullcrap. We're going with, what does the schedule say now? How good was the team when you played them? We don't care if a team was ranked in the first game of the season and now they only won 2 games, and that's not a quality win for your team. So Sacramento State, what do we got for them, Jamie? How are they looking, my man?
Let's see. Sacramento State, thanks to this wonderful research by Matthew Frazee, they do have a strength of schedule of 32. So that's fairly solid. They lost to Cal, which is an FBS team. And they lost to Northern Iowa back early in the season, which is their only loss to an FCS team. They did beat Montana, and we predicted that they will beat UC Davis. So a couple of solid wins there. And then again, 8-0 in the Big Sky. You can't leave that team out.
Yeah, Sacramento State looking good. And of course, that game next week is huge as we predict them to beat UC Davis. Okay, so far, not so bad, right? Patrick Firk says, shake my head. Sacramento State stinks. Well, we'll have to see, as they were the 4 seed a few years back and they did get upset right away, but we'll see if they pull it up this time. So, all right. So I guess it's my call. Well, looking across, I still think I have a lot of really, really good options. I think I'm going to go a little bit off brand, not completely, but no, I'll make it simple. I do think if you're going to project Eastern Washington to win next week, Eastern Washington, also from the Big Sky, should be in the field. I think they've got a good enough resume. When you actually take a look at quality wins and stuff, here's the breakdown. Eastern Washington has a loss to Weber State and Montana State. So not a great loss to Weber. Montana State, though, should be a top 4 seed. But their quality wins include an FBS win over UNLV. They will have beaten Montana, who I think is going to get into the field. And they just beat UC Davis, who I think also could get into the field. So they have 3 quality wins, which is really high compared to most. They are looked at as 8-2 in the committee's eyes because Eastern played a Division II team. So, they would have 8 FCS D1 wins, not 9, even though they're 9-2 overall. And their strength of schedule is 19th. Tough strength of schedule, 3 quality wins, losses that are justified, 1 bad one, but it was close. I think Eastern Washington's a shoo-in to get in there along with the other 2 you've already added. Any pushback from Kylor? I'm guessing no. Jamie, anything against your Eagles here?
Yeah, we shouldn't be a playoff team. We're going to end the season 9-2. That is just trash. Horrible team. Worst offense in the nation. So we shouldn't be in, but I guess you're the last say, so we'll do it.
Oh, I'm sorry to let you down, buddy. I'm sorry to put your Eagles into the field. So making this tough for you. All right, guys. So James Madison, Sac State, and Eastern Washington are in at larges. Excited to see what Mr. Jamie Williams puts up for matchups. Of course, we still have to seed these teams after we get them all in here. So, all right. Next up is going to be you, Kylor. We're back around the horn. What do you think, my man? Who is going to be your next team that's going to be coming in, and why?
So I'm going to change the system a little bit, okay? This is where we may get the first a little bit of kickback, maybe not. But here's the deal. I'm actually going with Southeastern Louisiana for the 4th team in.
That's who I was going to pick.
Okay, well then maybe we won't get any kickback, and I should just shut up. But the reason is they're going to be 9-2 on the season. that is 9-1 versus the FCS, and their only loss is going to be to Incarnate Word, who's a conference champion, who is already a top 25 team. Yes, they lack any good wins, right? When you're looking at the resume, they'll actually have 0 ranked wins in terms of teams finishing. But the difference is they've dominated 99% of their opponents. In the one game that they had against Incarnate Word, it was such a close, amazing game at the very end where Southeastern Louisiana had a chance to win. It was one of those 60-55 old school Big Sky games. I think at 9-2, basically 9-1 versus the FCS, Southeastern Louisiana is a lock to make it into the field somewhere. So I'm going to put them this early.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt when you have Cole Kelly and the likely him, the runner-up or the winner between him and EB3 for the Walter Payton Award. So hopefully we'll see them facing somebody for a fun, quality matchup. But I think CELA, correct. They have played enough. That loss to UIW was really close. And their FBS loss was by 3 points, I recall. So, I mean, they almost had an FBS win. CELA could be looking at a very high seed if just a few points or things go different. So I think you're spot on there, Kylor. I don't have any disagreement. Jamie, you agree? We got 2 Southland teams in there now with Incarnate Word and Southeastern Louisiana.
I wish I could, because it's kind of boring without us arguing. Hopefully we'll be able to argue here in a little while, but
we'll get there. We'll get there, folks. Hold on.
I think the Lions have to go in. There's strength schedule is 55, which isn't great, but it's not the worst on the board of the teams that we're going to talk about. It's better than ECSU's strength schedule. So, there's, like I said, there are 2 or 3 plays away from being completely unbeaten on the season, running through just about everybody. So they go in.
Here, we want some arguments on the show. Let's go back. Matt, how do you pronounce Sagregan again?
Don't do this to me, guys. I'm easily the least educated person for like civilian education.
No, you have degrees.
Please don't make me say it.
This guy couldn't even pass Eastern. That's saying a lot of things.
I do like this comment from a Facebook user here. He asks, how come Southeastern Louisiana gets some sort of benefit of the doubt and other teams don't? At large bids shouldn't be participation trophies. That is an auto bid. Actually, if you were to take CELA, of course, benefit of the doubt can be used as a phrase, but if you actually took CELA, their strength of schedule, it's actually better than quite a few teams than you realize. Their strength of schedule is at 55. Right now, like James Madison's is at 48th. And James Madison's one quality win with an FCS loss is going to be over William and Mary. So, you could just look at face value that JMU is great and be like, I know they're good. But on paper, CELA's strength of schedule is comparable. They had a close loss to a team that's automatically in, no different than James Madison. And they've got really talented players and rosters, and they've had a lot of blowout wins. So, I don't know. I think that justifies enough to be able to put CELA in the field. So I think they would. I think they do okay.
My comment to this, a little bit of a reaction would be, because yes, everyone's going to have a different opinion on, is Southeastern Louisiana going to beat some of the top tier teams? Like this Facebook user right there, James Madison would destroy Southeastern Louisiana. Cool. James Madison would destroy.
I need to shut down my Facebook.
Right. Yeah, exactly. This is Jamie just commenting. But at the end of the day, look at the semifinals in the history. What are some of the semifinal games that hasn't been a complete blowout? This happens in the playoffs. It is what it is. Styles make for matchups. But at the end of the day, if you're picking maybe the top 30 teams and comparing them to the strength of schedule, how many other 9-win Division I teams have a better strength of schedule than Southeastern Louisiana? It is not 24 teams. I'll say that. Sometimes you have to just look at it on paper and go, 9 wins. All right, that is better than maybe a 7-win team that has a stronger strength of schedule, because that's still 2 more Division I wins. Yes, maybe that 7 team could have went and played their schedule and got the 9-win teams, but guess what? It didn't. So there is a little bit of interesting facts when you are looking at some type of playoff committee. Right now, Southeastern Louisiana, they are a nightmare matchup for a few teams out there that are going to be playoff caliber teams. If you have a bad passing defense, you do not want to play Southeastern Louisiana, right? You could have a phenomenal rushing defense, which is helping your total defensive stats. But if you have a bad passing defense, this is a team that can torch you. So, right now at 9-2, again, 9-1 versus the FCS, even though maybe their strength of schedule isn't as comparable as some of the Missouri Valley teams, they should get a nod. That's just my point. So I'm going to override the comments and go, guess what? I'm picking Southeastern Louisiana, so they get to join in the bracket.
Yeah, and guys, it's good to mix it up too because like you don't want these 3 fans of Eastern, NDSU, and JMU just putting in first all the CAA, Big Sky, and Valley teams, and then just at the end being like, well, now what do we pick between the rest? I mean, come on now. So, but I do like the interaction of the fans. We love it as we move into our 5th team entering at an at-large. Jamie, this is your selection, my man. Are we going to debate you, or are we just going to agree with you? What do you got?
I hope I'm not going to crash the motorcycle here, but I'm going to pick Missouri State.
Missouri
Bobby
State.
Petrino's team. I can't believe we went this far without talking about the Valley. All those Valley fans out there have got to be bored. So let's talk about a Valley team. Missouri State. Yes, they lost to North Dakota State, and then they lost to Youngstown. Bad loss there. Lost to Oklahoma State. Doesn't matter. They got a quality win over Southern Illinois. They beat South Dakota. So that team's kind of peaking at the right time. I think that's a playoff team.
Yeah, for sure. They have some more quality wins. If you wanted to count quality win as current top 25 or playoff caliber team that at least the committee would discuss, Missouri State, a lot of people say they could be fringe seed is what they're talking about right now. Because if you think South Dakota's a playoff team, Missouri State beat them. If you think that Southern Illinois is a playoff team, Missouri State beat them. They went into the Fargo Dome and only lost by 7. And if it wasn't for a quarterback change, Missouri State could have easily won that game. So here's the thing. Missouri State looking good. So credit to Bobby Petrino. And Garth is mentioning one of our fans. He says Missouri State quarterback looks good. He's very good. Their interior offensive line is really brutal, but he kind of plays and he wears number 3. He plays a lot like Eric Berrier and he keeps plays alive. So yeah, so I completely agree with Missouri State. We're bound to have a few Valley teams. I don't have any pushback there unless Kylor thinks that's a bad pick.
So I'm probably the guy out of all the admins that has Missouri State ranked the highest. I have them number 7 in my top 25. So, of course, I'm going to agree with Jamie. Look, they were even competitive with the number 10 team in the FBS, Oklahoma State. It's not like that was a bad loss by any means. They were competitive with North Dakota State, which everyone's having is probably a 4 seed, something around there, a 4 seed or better. They have good wins. They've beaten Southeastern Louisiana, North Dakota, Northern Iowa, all in a row. Those are tough games. So if any other Missouri Valley team is, on the ability to maybe get a seed or at least a playoff bid, Missouri State outside of North Dakota State definitely deserves the highest recognition so far. Petrino's done an extremely good job. Chris Hammond, that's the only thing he's ever been right in his life. He said Missouri State is now a power. And guess what? He's been right. Missouri State, they look absolutely fantastic this season.
He's just mad that he got the wrong Petrino.
The wrong Bobby. Oh, that's good. All right, guys, we got 5 set here. JMU, Sac State, Eastern Washington. CLA, as one of our fans said, Nick, this is great. St. Louis University does not have a football program. This is CLA, not SLU. You got me there, Nick. Good job.
No, that's not true. They asked to be SLU before the year. They don't want to be CLA.
They're trying to switch
Danny
it up
Johnson, if you're listening, correct me if I'm wrong.
Danny the man. And Missouri State enters the field. Guys, it is my pick now here for the 16 to enter as an at-large. I'm just going to keep what I believe simplicity. I'm going to keep it going. We had a comment here that said those are the 3 best conferences. Well, let's stick with them then. I think Southern Illinois is an easy team to put into the playoff field. I think Southern Illinois, they sit at 8-3 after next Saturday if they win. Their FBS loss was to Kansas State, and it was not a blowout. I think it was like 10 points. Their 2 FCS losses come at the hands of UNI, who's at least at 500, and Missouri State, who we just put into the playoff field. So, but let's justify them with quality over their losses, right? Quality win over South Dakota State, who is likely also a playoff team. So they've got a playoff team they've already beaten, and their Massey rating or strength of schedule right now sits at 8th. 8th for the strength of schedule to go 8-3. To me, that's no joke. So good stuff and not too bad. So yes, Massey rating of 8th. I'm going to put in Southern Illinois. Do you guys think the Salukis and Nick Hill deserve to be in there or not so much?
I have a Saluki helmet, so of course they're getting in the playoff bid. That's about the only thing I can say. Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at their strength of schedule, definitely one of the strongest strength of schedules in all the FCS, right? And then they're still going to round off with 8 wins. And that's 8 wins against Division I opponents, I believe. Yeah, they definitely deserve to be in the playoff field, and they're going to get a playoff bid. At 8-3, they're gonna be in. So Matt, great pick.
Bring them in there. So someone says it was 1 score, not 10 points. I hate to tell you guys, I'm not Googling things right in front of me. I'm going with assumptions. So, all right, here we go. Here we go. All right, number 7, Kylor, you've got the 7th pick. Things are going to get tough here now for the teams that we feel like could be left. I'm going to let the audience know, if you're listening to this on our podcast platforms or watching on YouTube, we still think teams that could get in for the remaining, I guess it would be 7 spots. We think Stephen F. Austin, Eastern Kentucky, UC Davis, Montana, Kennesaw, Rhode Island, William and Mary, South Dakota State, Mercer, Chattanooga, VMI, and Florida A&M are possibilities. We don't think anybody who has only 6 wins is going to make the field this year, so that knocks a lot of people out, like maybe Nichols and you and I. So of those remaining, Kylor, is it still easy, or what do you got, man? Who is your next selection?
Here's the deal. I'm going to keep it Big Sky related. You know, we're already seeing a lot of Big Sky teams in this playoff field, and you guys can call me biased for this, but even with a loss against Montana State, I think Montana is a lock for the playoffs at 8-3. You know, they go 8-3. Sure, they lost to Eastern Washington in a last-second, game. That was very close. They lost to Sac State, and they're going to lose to Montana State. The big difference is they have a win against Washington. If you're in the Big Sky and you have 8 wins, that's really about 8.5 wins, maybe even 9 in the committee's playoff simple rating system. So I think Montana gets in at 8-3. That's about what I think. Let's hear some. Kylor, you're stupid. You're wrong. The Big Sky sucks. Let's hear some of it.
We're definitely going to get to that as we get here into the last, I would say, 4 or 5 picks, because I know I've got different opinions from you guys. But this is just not a time where I'm going to be able to pull out the guns. I think this is a pretty easy call because Montana, of all things, they beat a Power 5 team in Washington. You already mentioned that. That's so good. Strength of schedule is in the top 30s at number 27 right now. And the quality win, I mean, with an FBS win, now they did get beat by, you could say, all their tough FCS competition, right? So you could say that. You could say Montana has an FBS win. Is that the only reason they're going to get in the field? Why would I include a team into the playoffs that can't even beat teams that are playoff caliber? There's literally nothing there. But it's not the... If you line that FBS up win, it's tough. So I think you're safe with Montana getting into the field, especially at the 8-win mark. It's not like there's a Division II win in there for them. So I like your pick, Kylor. But if I had to push back on you because you wanted it, I'd say they just didn't beat anybody in the FCS who was good. But beating Washington's impressive. So,
yeah.
Cool. All right. Montana is into the field. And Jamie, that brings us back to you, my man. You're selecting the 8th at large here. Who do you got for bringing into the field as it continues to dwindle?
Well, I am going to go with a team that pulled a rabbit out of a loss yesterday, and I'm going to go with the Coyotes actually snapping the rabbit's neck. South Dakota, with that win yesterday against South Dakota State, locked themselves into the field, in my opinion.
South Dakota, the Coyotes, Missouri Valley just pulling teams in left and right as the Coyotes make their way into it. South Dakota, they're kind of on the uprise. Their big win for the season, like initially where people kind of took notice, was definitely over UND. That's where people got excited. Like people were like, UND from the spring, they should be good. They should have an opportunity. But then when USD took them, that kind of switched things around, and USD kind of sat in that seat where they were. So South Dakota, if they were to win or they were to lose next week, they would still sit at 7-4. So they've got the 7 wins. They lost to Kansas. That game was close. Losing to Missouri State, NDSU, and Illinois State, only one of those losses is really bad. But beating South Dakota State on that last second definitely saved them. They would not be remotely allowed into this field if they had lost last week and lost to NDSU. They would be sitting at 6 wins. They're out, bubble burst. So that last second done. Kylor, do you think this many Valley teams right now is legitimate, or do you think we're kind of overdoing it at this point?
I mean, let's just go in the history of the playoff committee. Now, I know this committee is brand new, right? No one's been in this committee before, which is kind of interesting. But if you have an 8-3 team versus Division I opponents in the Missouri Valley, that's a lock. Or what is South Dakota? They're going to be 7-4 in our eyes, or 7 wins against the FCS in arguably the strongest conference in the FCS. Yeah, I mean, 7-3 versus the FCS, you're in, especially after that big win against South Dakota State, who most people are going to have in the playoffs, right? As long as they take care of business this next weekend, South Dakota State's most likely in the playoffs. So you have a win over a playoff team, you're in the playoffs at 7-3 versus the FCS. I think it's a solid pick.
Yeah, I'm going to show people actually the resumes that I built here at the end. So if you stick around for the whole podcast, you're going to see it at the end. You're going to be amazed at how few quality wins there actually are. Like one quality win, you'd be amazed at how many people haven't beat anybody who's top 25 or anybody who right now is respectable. So 1, 2, or 3 quality wins in our eyes, which is current up-to-date information. Committee may view it at time, but we view it as up-to-date information, is actually super, super impressive. So all right, guys, let's keep it rolling here. Jamie with pick number 8. That leaves it back to me for number 9 to bring somebody into the field. And oh boy, do I take the last Big Sky team, the last Missouri Valley team that we feel are options in UC Davis or South Dakota State, or do I start to reach into the Southern? I have high hopes for the Southern. So, or do I start looking at FAMU? And I really think 2 Q7s are getting in. I'm talking out loud here, guys, because this one's tough. Jamie, I do kind of disagree with you when it comes. No, do I disagree with you with Mercer? All right,
Pick the other one.
I'm gonna go with Chattanooga. I'm gonna put Chattanooga into the field at 7-4, and here's why, guys. Because their FBS loss was to Kentucky. They played Kentucky super tough. Okay, so I'm gonna put Chattanooga in here. Their losses were to VMI, who right now is a fringe maybe playoff team. Mercer, who is a fringe playoff maybe team, and they lost Austin P. That's a bad one. But they do have that quality win over ETSU. So a 10-1 team, a team we think could be a seed. We're going to find that out later here in the podcast. So I think that with a strength of schedule 35th, and as one of our Facebook users has commented, the SoCon just beating each other up, no different than the Missouri Valley. I like Chattanooga going into this season. I thought they had a slow start. So I like Chattanooga into the field. There's no way both of you are spot on with that pick. Jamie, you said go with the other one. Were you referring to Chattanooga or were you thinking about VMI? Because I'm taking Chattanooga.
As much as it pained me that I was hoping that VMI would be able to pick up a win, they almost got past Furman. That, to me, probably burst their bubble. When I said go to the other one, it was Chattanooga. Mercer has never made the playoffs, and as much as I'd like them to, the only games of theirs you can consider are their SoCon games, and they lost to VMI, and they beat Chattanooga, but Chattanooga also beat ETSU.
Well, here's the thing, too, is Mercer played a Division II team, so they're going to be 8-3, but in the committee's eyes, that's 7-3. Chattanooga 7-4, so yeah, an extra loss, but in terms of wins, that is the same. The strength of schedule for Chattanooga right now, 35th. The strength of schedule for Mercer, 63rd. So Mercer lost to ETSU, like you said. Chattanooga beat them. Mercer lost to VMI, so did Chattanooga. So if you had to choose from the SoCon, I think Chattanooga has that edge. So
yeah, and as funny as it sounds, Chattanooga's win over ETSU was a better win than Mercer's win over Chattanooga. And so that to me almost is one of the tiebreakers, as goofy as that sounds.
Kyler, man, you're shaking your head. So you hating on me on this?
I am. Of course, you're going to override me because that's what you do, you unbiased bastard. But here's the deal. If let's say both teams are going to have 7 wins versus the FCS, right? Because that D2 win does not count, right? It is what it is. That D2 win doesn't count. So Mercer is 7-3. Chattanooga is 7-3 versus the FCS. That head-to-head is more important than anything else. I think if you're going to pick Chattanooga, Mercer is above Chattanooga. People will look at head-to-heads when the resume is similar. And I do think the resume is similar when both have 7 FCS wins. You're going to look at the team, especially recently. There is some recency bias that we always see in the committee's eyes. You're going to look at, all right, who just played who? Oh, Mercer just beat Chattanooga. If Chattanooga deserves to be in the FCS playoffs, Mercer does too, if they have the same resume. So that's kind of my difference. So I think if you're picking Chattanooga, Mercer should definitely be above them. But that's where I disagree with both of you all, because, you have a Midwest and a Southern guy who doesn't know anything about football. I'm just joking. I love all of you guys. But that's my big disagreement, because when the resumes are so similar, you should lean to the team who had the win over the other team, if that makes sense. That head-to-head win is important.
Yep, that's a fair assessment. I think the committee will look to that head-to-head as something big, and that could be your defining factor. I just really like that win over ETSU. So it's like, do you knock them for the loss? And it's hard to knock for a loss or with the win. Yeah, you make good points, but I'm sticking with it. I'm going to go with Chattanooga. I'm going to put them into the field. And the reason I'm saying that is because I do think a third SoCon team could get in there. So I don't think I don't think that's too crazy, but we're going to see what you guys ultimately decide as we move into pick number 10. Oh boy, guys, we don't have many left. And Kylor, it is up to you, my man. Who are you putting in now that's remaining in this field?
Listen, here's what's going to happen. The Jackrabbits from South Dakota State, they're getting in. That win over North Dakota State is still one of the most impressive FCS wins on the season. Yes, they lost to their rival in a weird Hail Mary. Yes, they lost to Southeastern Louisiana when they went for 2 instead of just kicking a field goal in overtime. I think overall it's going to be really tough as long as South Dakota State takes care of business next weekend or this weekend like we think they do to leave them out of the playoff field. So South Dakota State, you are in, which now makes 5 Missouri Valley teams in the playoffs.
Oh,
and I
boy.
think that is very accurate to assume that that's going to happen.
All right. So does the Missouri Valley represent like in 2015 when Western Illinois got in at like 6-5 and got to the second round? They won their first round game to semi-justify that selection? Or do they fall apart like the CAA did in 2018 and everyone goes, ooh, that was not wise to put that many in? Jamie, are you okay with 5 Valley teams with South Dakota State being the last one, or do you think that's kind of a stretch?
Yeah, I think that's where it ends right there. I mean, they've got to be in, though. If they lose to North Dakota, they're out, and we would have never thought we'd be talking about South Dakota State as a bubble team, but I think they go ahead at home and get a win over North Dakota like we've talked already. You can't leave that team out. They've got an FBS win. They're the only team that's beaten North Dakota State, bubble or not. They're not a seed. They're playing somebody in the first round, but that's a team that's in the playoffs.
Very, very interesting. Okay, well, moving out of the Valley is now gone. The Southland teams we feel like could be in are also the Southland teams we thought could be in. Incarnate Word, Autobid, Selah at large are in. We thought the Valley could get 4 to 5. They got all 5 for our predictions here. And the teams we have remaining, guys, are 2 in the AQ7, 1 Big Sky team, 1 Big South, 2 CAA, 2 Southern, and a SWAC team, Florida A&M. So if you guys don't know, let's talk about that SWAC just real quick. Not saying we're going to put them up here because it's about to be Jamie's pick, but Florida A&M, they will finish likely with Jackson State winning next week. They will finish second in their division of the SWAC. So they will not go to the SWAC championship. They will be eligible for an at-large selection. And the MEAC, South Carolina State, they actually won their conference this week as well. So Florida A&M is going to be that HBCU team that's going to be really good. That's going to be left out of the opportunity to go play in the SWAC championship and the Celebration Bowl, and they will be 9-2. So that's why they are included for some people who think that the HBCUs just don't play in the playoffs. That's not true. There's scenarios where they get in, and it's happened in the past. So a little bit of education there for you. Jamie, we are down to the final 3 for at-larges, and the next one's yours, my man. Who is this team?
I am going to put up for consideration the team of the Hacks, the team of Joe DeLeon and Sean Anderson. I'm going to put up the Rhode Island Rams.
The Rams.
The Rams of Rhode Island, and with a win next week, go to 8-3 with an FBS win over UMass. Of course, more than half of that conference that JMU and Rhode Island play in would probably beat UMass. 2 of them already have. They did get smoked by Villanova. They lost to Maine and Towson. So they don't have a huge quality win other than having an FBS win, but they're 8-3 in that conference. So it's going to be hard to leave that team out. Rams are in the playoffs, in my opinion.
Do you think that they're, I'll add them in here for you, but Mercer, man, why not Mercer? Like, I know Mercer has one less win because they play D2, but Mercer's got quality win. They got Chattanooga. Maybe they also have an FBS loss. I don't know, man. I think I'd fight for that SoCon Mercer team, I think, before Rhode Island.
And I'll counter with you, Matt, because I agree with Jamie on this one. Rhode Island 8-3 with an FBS win. They are in. The big difference on why you're fighting for Mercer is because you know you were completely wrong picking Chattanooga over
No.
That is
Chattanooga actually had a tough strength of schedule, unlike these Rams and Bears.
Yeah, you shut your dirty mouth. There's a reason why Chattanooga lost to Mercer just this weekend, right? There's a reason for it, you punk. But that's the reason why you're fighting for them. 8-3 CAA team with an FBS win, that's a lock. I mean, let's look at what has
FBS
happened.
win, UMass. I know it counts, but whatever.
It counts. It counts. We're looking at this through the committee's eyes, not the Matthew Frazee's eyes.
Put them against Alabama like Mercer played.
See, the last 3 picks, this is where this is going to get interesting because all of us are going to disagree. But Jamie definitely knows what he's talking about. Rhode Island is a lock if they win out, which guess what? 8-3, an FBS win. They had a very bad couple slumps, week, but CA is still tough. And overall, they're going to get a bid over Mercer. If it's coming down to it, the big difference is Chattanooga deserving of a bid over Mercer. That's where your real argument is, you bum, you knucklehead.
Oh, man, I don't know. I guess it is the CAA, but like just because UMass is what's going to get them. Like I get with Montana, you're like, they beat Washington, who's not a great Power 5 team this year, but they're still Washington. But like, is UMass the edging factor with all of this? Oh,
the
my
simple rating system, it shows that they are. And you were one of the first people in the history of this page to point out the simple rating system and how it operates.
That's true.
You did deep research. You asked people from the actual FCS about the simple rating system. So we know it does not matter if you play Alabama or UMass. They still count the exact same, which is unfortunate.
Oh, I know you're right that those are the facts. My emotions want to take it away, and I'm also happy Jamie picked Rhode Island to get a little disagreement going. We knew this was going to happen in the final 3 or 4. So, all right, you guys hate my Chattanooga. I'm not a fan of your Rhode Island pick. That's okay. We're still pushing forward.
Jamie likes it.
Oh, he likes
Jamie. Loved your Chattanooga.
Yep.
I'm just the only one disagreeing with I'm only disagreeing with Matthew Frazee. That's it.
That's right.
This is the Matthew Frazee versus chaos.
Wait till we get to the seeds. Wait till we get to the seeds. This is good.
Yeah, I mean, these last 2 are going to be a bear, but y'all have fun with that because y'all get to pick them. So
that is a great segue, Jamie. As we have entered the final 2 at-larges, guys, here's what our current thing looks like. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching us live, you have your auto bids out here. You have your at-larges currently, and we are about to select the final 2, and then we're going to get into seeding, and then Jamie's going to put the bracket together. So stay tuned. We're over 70 people watching right now. Thank you guys for all the comments and checking it out. All right, let's do this. It's my pick, and then Kylor gets the last one. Okay. Teams that I am not interested in picking at this time from the remaining list. I don't think William and Mary is worthy to put in as the 4 CAA team. Stephen F. Austin's strength of schedule is so low compared to the others. Eastern Kentucky, I don't think they've given me enough show me stuff. Like Jacksonville State at the end, is that going to be your show me game that really gets me excited? I don't think so. I honestly think UC Davis is the easy call here to make. But if I look at UC Davis in the Big Sky, I'm pulling up my notes here, guys. They lost to Idaho State, Sacramento State, and Eastern, but they have an FBS win over Tulsa and a strength of schedule 43rd. And I did all the resume research, guys. I'm not seeing much out of other teams. They got to 8 wins, and compared to a lot of these teams that have 7 wins, and Kennesaw State, their strength of schedule is too enormously low. You know what? I have to go with UC Davis out of the Big Sky. Another team, I just don't see justification for putting anybody else above them with 8 wins and an FBS victory and a 43rd strength of schedule. So I will take UC Davis as the 23rd team to enter as the at-large. Did I get it wrong? Did I get it right? Jamie, what do you think?
That Tulsa win's going to put them in. Otherwise, it's tough because they lost to Idaho State. They lost to Eastern Washington. We've predicted they lose to Sacramento State. Gosh, it's tough. That FBS win. Are we overvaluing FBS wins here?
I think that's the question. Are you overvaluing? So Kyler's right. They will use the simple rating system. Are we overvaluing junk FBS wins over the fact that teams, but then go down the line. Kennesaw doesn't have a quality win. Go down to William and Mary. I'll click into William and Mary here out of the CAA, did their research. Their quality win, but they beat Villanova. Oh my goodness. So is it Villanova or that? Can I still go back? Can I still rehash this? I got an cop
Sure.
out, don't I?
This is your pick. You do whatever This is your podcast, your research. Jamie and I didn't do anything. You can do whatever you want.
Oh my goodness. This is so incredibly difficult. I'm gonna stick with what I said. I'm gonna stick with UC Davis, but I'm not confident about it, guys. I'm really that's tough. If you guys here's this, you could sway me. I'm gonna give you this opportunity. You say I can do whatever I want. If you guys think right now there's somebody who should be in over them, sway me right now, because I'm not sold that maybe UC Davis was the right call. I'm torn between them, William and Mary, and possibly another Southern team. What do you think? Or do you think I'm right? You think I'm right?
Here's the deal. Let's look at potential. I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit, even though if it's not my true belief, because I think 8-3 UC Davis probably gets in. But the difference is the last 2 games of the season, they get beat. I think it depends on how bad they get beat by Sacramento State, right? If they get murdered by Sacramento State, like how they just did with Eastern Washington, the game was not close. The scoreboard even makes it seem a little closer, and it's still, a 20-point win, something like that. If they get absolutely handled by Sacramento State, they may not be able to get in because they have no good FCS wins besides Weber State, which is one of James Madison's best wins. At the end of the day, that's still one of James Madison's best wins. But now we know that Weber State is not a playoff team. That Tulsa win, that puts it as at least another half win. So you're thinking UC Davis is 8.5 to 9-3, basically. We're going off the simple rating system, not if it's realistic or not. But UC Davis did not play Montana State. UC Davis did not play Montana. That's where the Big Sky gets a little bit jumbled up. And if they get creamed by Sacramento State and creamed by Eastern Washington, which already happened, then that's where maybe they're not in. I just want to play a little devil's advocate to think, to have you start thinking a little bit, because this is your pick. I think UC Davis is about as close to a lock as you can be. But also with some of the other teams remaining, this is that weird season where there is more than 24 deserving teams. The one rare year out of the last 500,000 years that there's actually 24 plus deserving teams to be in this postseason. Jamie, I'm gonna push it back on you and say because I didn't help Matt at all. I said
I was like, "Where's the advice?"
I did not. When I think about it, I didn't help Matt at all. I just basically said UC Davis is definitely in and definitely out. So, Jamie, where's your head at?
Yeah, I think I'm a hypocrite if I say that UC Davis is out if Rhode Island's in. So, I think I painted myself into that corner there. Because Rhode Island didn't have to play a couple of the top teams. They didn't play William and Mary. They didn't play James Madison. Whereas UC Davis didn't play Montana State and Montana, right? So, we might have to go back and maybe override ourselves here later. But, Matt, make your pick, buddy.
Is it crazy that I'm thinking about Kennesaw? Is that crazy?
No.
Is it crazy? So for people who are promoting Kennesaw right now, hear me out. Kennesaw's current Massey rating is 89th. Okay, they're 8-2 in the committee's eyes because they played a Division II team. They will have no victories over quality teams or top 25 wins. FBS lost to Georgia Tech. FCS lost to playoff Monmouth. So even CLA has more wins when you're talking about like the comparables there. So
here's the only thing I'll kind of, and maybe this will go to the next pick anyway. Guys, McNeese State was 9-2 one year, 9-1 versus the FCS. They did not get in because they lacked any decent wins. Right now, Kennesaw State, in our hypothetical, because Jamie picked Monmouth over Kennesaw State, maybe that's not going to happen. Then Kennesaw State is in the playoffs no matter what. But if Kennesaw State loses to Monmouth, their best win is Jacksonville State, who's 5-5. That is their best win. Now, they absolutely torched them, but everyone else is a bottom 25% FCS program that they have actually beat. Maybe not, because NCA&T has been better in previous years, but this year they're not very good. So that's kind of the difference. They will have one more win. Actually, they'll have the same amount of wins. Kennesaw is going to have the same amount of wins against FCS opponents as UC Davis. So who are you going to put in that one? Just think of it that way.
Okay.
They're both going to have 8 Division I wins. But UC Davis has an FBS, so maybe it's 8.5. So there you go.
Okay, here we go. Yeah. I'm going to stick with it. I'm not super happy about it. I'm going to stick with UC Davis as the winners. Just stick with what I would go with right away. Don't know if I'm completely sold, but there you go. We'll go with UC Davis.
I'm convinced this CJ Williams guy is Kevin Marshall's alter ego.
If I was honestly thinking about VMI a little bit there, guys, at 7-4. So, all right, UC Davis, we'll put him into the field. We'll move past it. And Kylor, the heat's off me now a little bit, man, but I know you love the heat. You are the final selection here for the at-larges before we start getting into playoff seeding. Remaining teams, guys, if you're not watching, you're listening. Stephen F. Austin, Eastern Kentucky out of the AQ7 are eligible, we think. We think Kennesaw is eligible. We think William and Mary could be a team. Mercer, Virginia Military Institute, and Florida A&M. So that brings us down to a grand total of 7 teams for 1 spot. Kylor, who's in? Who are the 6 left out? You got it, buddy.
This is the crazy one. The last pick. You know, SFA, they're going to have, what is it? They're going to have 7 Division I wins if they win out, right?
Yep.
Kennesaw, they're going to have 8 Division I wins if they win out, or they won't win out in our hypothetical. William and Mary, they're going to have 7 Division I wins. Now, Ryan Humphreys, you just went over the last remaining teams, so your comment I can't see. So thank you so much. Yeah, Walk On Podcast, which if you guys have not listened, go listen to the Walk On Podcast in the Believe Network. It is such a good podcast. They're 2 dudes from Sam Houston who are walk-ons. A little bit of a plug because I think it's such a good podcast.
It's great.
Ryan
Florida
and Dalton
A&M.
are phenomenal.
Florida A&M. Now they're going to be 9-2. The difference is they're going to be really 8-2 because of they played a Division I team. They're also the 3rd place team in the SWAC. Whew, this is tough. The only reason why I'm picking this team is because of something that Matt did earlier in the episode. If you're going to pick Chattanooga, you have to pick the team that's going to have a very similar record who beat Chattanooga. So I'm going Mercer gets that last bid just because of what Matthew picked. If Matthew did not pick Chattanooga, it'd be maybe between Kennesaw, maybe between William and Mary. But since Matthew Frazee, the unbiased Bison, picked Chattanooga, I think it's safe to say Alabama loss does not hurt them. Losses to VMI, it is what it is. VMI is at least good. ETSU, it doesn't matter. They're the SoCon champs. The win over Chattanooga, I think that helps push them above. So that's where I'm going. I'm going Mercer.
Mercer for the final. You think? I guess. Well, they played the Division II, correct? We're looking at on the screen right now. They played a Division II.
So did Kennesaw.
7-3.
So did Florida A&M.
Over William and Mary, who beat Villanova. William and Mary beat Villanova. That's likely a seeded team, right?
I would have had William and Mary over Chattanooga. That's the difference. But since you put Chattanooga in there, I have to counteract with the exact same FCS resume, but one team has a win over the other. So if the committee's putting Chattanooga in there, they probably have to put Mercer in there.
Oh man, I don't hate it, honestly. I just your point on I would love to throw Kennesaw in there, but I keep going back to your point about that McNeese year where they didn't even make the field and they were 9-2 or whatever. Jamie, what do you think about that last pick, or did you have one where you adamantly would have preferred?
I could have made an argument for most of them and made a counter to keep most of them out. Mercer's as good as any of the others. It's going to be tough for Kennesaw and William and Mary. Those would be the next 2. I think those are going to be your first 2 out.
No, talk me out of this. Talk me out of this.
VMI stomped those other 2 teams, but they also lost to the Citadel. Not just a Citadel, the Citadel they lost to. So that's an anchor on their schedule. I mean, Kennesaw, it stinks, but I can't put them in. William and Mary has the win over Villanova, but they also lost to Delaware. So
Here you go. So Stephen F. Austin, for you guys who are listening and watching, you're people getting upset and looking at Kylor. So this is the research that I did. Here it is. This is the stuff that I've broken down for quality wins and other things. So Stephen F. Austin, losing to Texas Tech, lost to Sam Houston, Jacksonville State. They have a D2 win, so they're 7-3. Their quality win is over Eastern Kentucky, who we don't feel is a playoff team, and they finished 78th. And then you have Eastern Kentucky. Massey, their strength of schedule 34th, but they have no quality or top 25 wins. So Kylor's saying Mercer beat a team Mercer beat a team that's in the field, which is huge.
Mercer beat a team that's in the playoffs, but so did William and Mary. My only difference is Mercer's going to have one more win.
And Kennesaw right here,
or at least one less loss. Let me point it that way. They're going to have one less loss because that D2 win does not count. They're going to have one less loss, and I think the CAA and the SoCon are closer together this year than they've ever been. Again, I actually would have had William and Mary in over Chattanooga, but since you had Chattanooga in, I think that's why I picked Mercer. But it's close, and guess what? There's literally, and like I said, this is the first time this has ever happened, at least in my eyes. There's about 5 teams that deserve to be in that last spot.
Oh, it's so crazy to look at the breakdowns and see who could have made it and who didn't. Jamie, you feel content with what we put together here, or you feel like there were some screw jobs?
I know. I mean, just like always, people are going to be upset, but at the end of the day, you've got to put 24 teams in, not 25, not 26. Now, do we want to go back and redebate anybody now that we've got 24? Does anybody feel completely strong that somebody needs to come out in favor of somebody else? We could do that before we go to the seeds. Go for it.
I think if Matthew Frazee is willing to get rid of his Chattanooga pick and put William Mary in, I will take a shot right now, right off the bat.
And you think that Nuga should be gone and William and Mary should be in?
I do think with their current resumes, because what do you value more? Do you value Chattanooga beating ETSU more than Villanova, or William and Mary beating Villanova and crushing them? Or, I mean, what's kind of your thought process on that?
I get that William and Mary beat Villanova.
I'm willing.
Their strength of schedule right now, 26 is stronger. Maine, bad loss. Delaware, bad loss. FBS, throw it out. James Madison, you were always going to lose to them. Chattanooga, when you look up into their fancy
they were the
little
favorites
resume,
to win the SoCon this year.
Lost to VMI, lost to Mercer. The Austin P is the bad one. FBS lost to Kentucky. Strength of schedule 35th. Quality win over ETSU.
Who do you want in over those two? I think that's where the real battle is. And throw
I'm gonna stick with Chattanooga. The strength of schedule is comparable. It's 10 spots. William and Mary's will probably drop a little bit after next week, and that win over ETSU should be valued. That ETSU team is undefeated without that. I get Villanova. Yeah, Villanova. They would be
undefeated without that loss too.
I think ETSU should be seeded too. So I think ETSU should be seeded. I think the seeding range is close. I think that losing to Mercer and VMI, I'm sticking with Chattanooga. I'm going to stick to my guns there. I know people might push back on it, but I think the SoCon is better than people realize this year. So I'm sticking with Chattanooga. Keep them in.
So my only question is, because you looked at the validating wins. So you have, and maybe I'm wrong to assume this, right? But maybe you have ETSU higher than Villanova. Am I wrong to assume that? But then my counteraction is, do you have Austin P lower than Maine or Delaware?
I'll self-admit even on the podcast, everybody, I didn't dig that deep. Right now I'd have to Google it in terms of
I think it's super close. Here, I'll take a drink just because I think they're super close. And I just want to drink some Crown Royal Apple.
Yeah, hey, nothing wrong with that. That's what this podcast is for. Sponsors,
thank you for choosing Crown Royal Apple, your official sponsor of the FCS podcast, Pick'em Bracket Challenge, whatever the hell we call this. It smells delicious.
Absolutely. I can smell it through the screen. So I think we are kind of set on the field, guys. And we are going to just do one quick recap before we get into the seeding. I think that's where everybody's really excited. Here's our auto bids, our at-larges. So we have Sam Houston, Montana State, Monmouth, Nova, NDSU, Sacred Heart, UT Martin, Holy Cross, Davidson, ETSU, and Incarnate Word as auto bids. And at larges, guys, we brought in James Madison, Sac State, Eastern Washington, Law, Missouri State, SIU, Montana, South Dakota, Chattanooga, South Dakota State, Rhode Island, UC Davis, and Mercer. Left out, guys, on our finale here, we feel like Stephen F. Austin and Eastern Kentucky were on the bubble. They are left out of the AQ7. Kennesaw is left out of the Big South by losing to Monmouth for that championship game this Saturday. William and Mary was the big debate. I'm going to leave them out. VMI is left out of the Southern, and Florida A&M left out of the SWAC. So there you go. We have our 24 team set. But now the thing everybody I think is really excited for is moving into some playoff seeding. So let's get into that right away, guys. And I'm about to share here live on our YouTube screen. It is time for the playoff seeds. So this is the big one everybody's nervous about. And just like we did with the at-larges, we will go in order. I'm going to give 3 selections to Jamie and Kylor each. I will take 2. And we are going to start with actually myself because I get the easy one. So I won't get yelled at, which is good. And we will start with the number 1 overall playoff seed. I think this is very simple. I think that this is Sam Houston State because when I look at Sam Houston, it's pretty simple for me. Their strength of schedule is not great. They are undefeated versus the FCS. They are 10-0. The thing with Sam Houston is I am not a benefit of the doubt guy at all. What you did last year should not matter because it's a new year. You have to look at returning rosters, coaching turnover, quarterbacks, impacts, all those things. But if there was ever a year to give benefit of the doubt, it's Sam Houston this year because of the spring and COVID turnover. So Sam Houston, in my opinion, tons of benefit of the doubt. And I don't have any questions about them. NDSU's offense, JMU's consistency. I don't know. Eastern's defense, I'm not sure about it. You could ask questions about these teams. I don't have questions about Sam Houston. I think they're a really good squad. I've had them number 1 in my poll all year. I'm not going to deter from that. I think Sam Houston is the 1 seed. Jamie, agreement, disagree? What do you think?
I agree. We had the right guy's name up there. Ryan, you're the number 1 seed, buddy.
Number 1 for Sam Houston. Kylor, you good with that?
The only thing that makes this even a conversation, Montana State goes 10-0 versus the FCS. Sam Houston goes 10-0 versus the FCS. Montana State has 2 wins over top 10 teams, potentially seeded category teams. There is a true argument. And if you're looking at, because you just said, question marks from the spring, they returned everyone from a national championship year. This is the first year Montana State's played since they were in the semifinals. Is that about the exact same thing? And the only thing is they upgraded was their quarterback, who was horrible. They were playing a linebacker and a very bad quarterback before. Now they actually have a quarterback who can make plays. I think they have a stronger defense across the board than Sam Houston. That is the only team who I think if they win out has a true argument to topple Sam Houston for the number 1 seed, but I don't think number 2 and number 1 is anything different. So who cares? I think if you guys agree with Sam Houston as a 1, then I will play to your guys' cards and go, yeah, it makes sense. Sam Houston, number 1.
Yeah, I just think there's no questions because of 22 returning starters, very few injuries. The talent is there. The coaching is there. Sam Houston. So they definitely get benefit of the doubt, and they deserve it, okay? This isn't some sort of, whatever. They deserve it. So congrats to the Bearcats, the number 1 seed in our playoff bracket. Going now to Mr. Williams. This will be your opportunity to select the 2 seed. And who do you have and why, Jamie?
Obviously, I'm going to pick James Madison because I'm a homer and I only pick homer picks. No, just kidding.
Perfect.
We're going to go
viewership is dropped.
That's right. Kylor just basically made the argument for me. I mean, we're going to have Montana State unbeaten against the FCS. Their loss to Wyoming was close. They're a play away from that. They've got wins over Eastern Washington. They'll have a win over Montana. I don't see how it's anybody but them. Montana State is the 2 seed.
Yeah, so a lot of people will question here. I think mostly they will think James Madison or NDSU of that 2 or Montana State. Let me just give you guys a quick recap of Montana State. Jamie hit on a few points. Official research here. Montana State only losing to Wyoming. They won over Eastern and Montana. That's 2 quality wins, 50th strength of schedule, which will increase next week when they play Montana. And you will add That is another quality win. I just don't think there's any question there. You could think about Eastern Washington, who had only an FBS loss in 2016 and was the number 2 seed, right? So you look at Eastern Washington in 2018 as well. There's Big Sky teams. If you're a Big Sky champion with 10 FCS wins and you have 2 quality wins, the odds of you not getting the 2 or 3 seed are going to be extremely low unless somebody else is just outright better than you. If you're wondering about NDSU and James Madison, remember those teams have FCS losses. Montana State only an FBS loss. Kylor, is Jamie right? Because I think he is.
Yeah, I just want to correct your one thing for 2016. Eastern had an FBS win. We lost to it. We lost to an FBS.
Oh, that's right. Yep, you're right.
Yeah, knucklehead. No, I mean literally.
Worthless over here.
Literally, I just made the argument for why Montana State should potentially be above Sam Houston when they both have 10 Division I wins. And really, Montana State was owning Wyoming. That's the crazy thing. It came down to a last drive for Wyoming to win. Montana State, they're going to have 2 top 10 wins on the season. I don't know many other programs that have that, especially that have that and they're undefeated. Worst case scenario, Montana State's a 2 seed.
Awesome. So Montana State, congratulations. They are the 2 seed. There's just a reminder of our playoff teams, guys, if you're taking a look at the screen right now on YouTube. And that leads me to you, Kylor, actually, for the 3 seed. So they feel like this is important because this will be the big difference. I think a lot of folks here are going to think this has to be James Madison or North Dakota State, unless you've got a big curveball. But if you select one of those 2, this would be the difference of going to Sam Houston or Montana State in the semis if those teams don't get upset. Who could be our first semi-road traveler? Kylor, what do you got?
I think this is probably the easiest pick of the whole seeding. We're going to go with Sacred Heart out of the
Perfect.
NEC as the champion. So write it down. Sacred Heart definitely deserves. I like how you did all capital, like I was being sarcastic. What a jerk. Let's give props to Sacred Heart. So, no, I do think when you're looking at the next step, you just mentioned it. It's between North Dakota State and James Madison. Right now, they each have 1 loss. They're going to finish with the same amount of wins. NDSU's wins right now are just a little bit better. Their strength of schedule is going to be a lot better. Wins over South Dakota State, Missouri State, South Dakota. I mean, they are going to have wins over 3 playoff teams that we already put in our field, right?
Oh, we didn't beat South Dakota State. People will kill you on that.
Oh yeah, my bad. Well, that's the 1 loss. It is what it is. That's a rivalry game, and it was in Brookings, and South Dakota State actually dominated you punks. But no, you're going to actually have wins over 2 playoff teams where James Madison probably has a win over 1 since you failed to put William & Mary in, but it is what it is. So North Dakota State, they do get that 3 seed. The road to the FCS championship does not go through Fargo, but it goes through Fargo enough.
All righty. And Jamie,
so just a couple of little points back that I'm gonna make, just because we're not just gonna make this easy. We're gonna talk about it a little bit because I want to, because I've got my JMU hat on. We are gonna have a better loss by 1 point, and next week we play Towson. That winds up as a common opponent. If we smoke Towson, that gives the committee something to think about. So I'm just going to say that because I'm going to defend my boys here.
I think that's totally fair. I don't think this is the easiest pick out of the entire bracket, just because I really do think if James Madison gets the 3 and NDSU the 4, that wouldn't shock me. You can see justifications on both sides, but Kylor's got some really good points there about what will they value, quality wins or one common opponent at the end in the very beginning. I think they're going to take that slight edge with NDSU beating South Dakota right at the end with a tougher strength of schedule. But it would not shock me to see the Dukes be above them. But I think more of the simple rating system outliers fall towards NDSU.
Well, and here's where I'll counter Jamie. North Dakota State played Towson at Towson. James Madison gets them at home. Also, the difference is North Dakota State was up 35-0 and Towson scored a 7-point garbage time. Do you think James Madison is going to look more dominant than that? Because that's basically a 35-0 win where Towson literally had probably. Well, we will see there. But North Dakota State outgained them by 300 yards, and North Dakota State's offense is trash. So, I mean, that's kind of what I'm looking at. But, I mean, I don't think we can just value that one game, because also CA teams are going to play CA teams differently than a CA team is going to play North Dakota State, especially when one's at home and one's on the road. I don't think it's as clear cut as you make it out to be. I'll go with right now, that Towson win doesn't do anything for either program. It's a bad win on both people's resumes.
Yep, it's going to be really close. So NDSU James Madison fans, if they want to, I think this is better for James Madison a little bit, honestly. Whether you're the 3 or 4, JMU and fans almost should cheer for Montana State to win, so they travel to Sam Houston or Montana State instead of Fargo. And NDSU fans should cheer for Montana State to lose, so maybe they can get that 2 seed. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, guys. We're not going to go down that prediction line because we need to move into seed number 4, which
And James
is mine.
Madison would rather play NDSU, that bum trash offense.
Yeah, they want to come into the dome. Well, that's 2 bad offenses, so bring in for the 4 seed. I think this is very simple. I'm not going to outthink the room because we literally just debated between them, and it's James Madison. James Madison will be 10-1. They will have 1 FCS loss. They will have their quality win over William and Mary. Even if they had won the CAA, which Villanova will be the CAA champ, James Madison, I don't think they even can win the CAA technically because the CAA sucks and they have weird rules. But I am going to give James Madison, the strength of schedule is good enough. The team looks just good. I can't see the committee steering away from them to Villanova with 1 less win, even though there was a head-to-head on a 1-point loss. So I'm not going to outthink the room. I'm also using historical data and just things we've seen in the past. They're not just going to jump somebody because of an upset. Think of 2016 NDSU, SDSU. So James Madison giving the edge there with number 4. Do you feel like that's fair for your Dukes, Jamie? Or do you think maybe they should have been a little bit?
Yeah, it's fair.
That's fair? Okay, cool.
Anywhere from 2 to 4 is fair for them, and we'll see what happens.
Cool. Yeah, if there's no chaos, I think this is the way we're going to see it start to line up. And that leads to you, Jamie. Now is where things get really interesting. Now is where we're like, oh my goodness. Okay, who's going to be 5-8? And it's up to you, Mr. Williams. I'm going to pull up the teams here. Who is going to be our 5 seed?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and give the 5 seed to Villanova. They do have the loss to William & Mary, and they lost to Penn State, but that doesn't count. They did beat James Madison, so you're probably thinking, oh, how does that happen, that they're behind them? Well, the full season counts. And the win over James Madison, like we said, was 1 point, and Ethan Rackey missed 2 field goals. Those are the only 2 field goals Ethan's missed all year out of 30. Ethan has kicked 100 field goals in his career, an NCAA record. Not FCS, NCAA. Ethan has 517 points. NCAA record, not FCS. I just had to put that in there and shout out my guy. But Villanova would be the 5 seed with that close game against James Madison. The loss to William & Mary hurts because they really got stomped in that game. But I think that's enough to get them to 5.
Okay, do you think that is worthy over ETSU because of strength of schedule? Like ETSU with an FBS win, ETSU with a extra win with the FCS teams, 10 wins, or are we just or is the SoCon just kind of poof, you're out in terms of that opportunity for the 5 seed? Because I don't know, that's not bad. Strength of schedule 74th for ETSU right now. Villanova, looking at it, there sits at, quick research here, there sits at 41st. So definitely a jump in strength of schedule. Is that enough, Jamie, with that win over James Madison over ETSU?
Yeah, I mean, I think that win's better than any win that ETSU has.
Okay. Kylor, you agree with that Villanova there? I think it could be a little questionable. I'm comfortable with it, but what do you think?
Yeah, so I actually had Villanova in my same 5. Like, this is my exact same top 5. The big difference with this is what other one-loss team has wins over anyone in the top 4 of the seeds? Only Villanova. So, yeah, I think it's safe to assume Villanova deserves a 5 as long as they take care of business this weekend, which that's what we have. So, yeah, Villanova, 9-2. An FBS loss against Penn State. Ooh, who cares? And then you beat James Madison, and then you lost to a team that I think should probably be at least in the conversation to be in the playoffs. Yeah, Villanova, they should be the 5 seed at 9-2.
That, interestingly enough, will send Villanova to James Madison in the quarterfinals, the 4 and 5 in the same pocket. So that's very interesting. You could have a revenge game or a possible doubling down, as Villanova had won that game earlier in the regular season. So right now, if you looked all the way into the quarters and semis, NDSU traveling to Montana State in the semis, James Madison going to Sam Houston, if there's no upsets, right? So it's kind of starting to form here together, which is interesting. Stick around with us, guys. Jamie's going to build this into a bracket before we're all done, and you're going to actually be able to see it on the screen. It's going to be really cool. Okay, so gets even more difficult here. Probably a little bit more debate coming down the line. Kylor, number 6, who do you got?
Number 6, you can call me biased. Right now, you call it. Say it. Say it, you punk, you knucklehead.
I can change your name tag, so I'll just do it as you're talking.
Biased.
The Bison EU admin. Here's the deal. Out of everyone in the top 10, Eastern Washington is going to have more top 10 wins than everyone outside of Montana State, right? So if they finish 9-2 with an FBS win and they went 2-1 versus the top 10, they're going to get a seed. And I think it's going to be a stronger strength of resume than most other teams. So Eastern Washington gets the 6th seed at 9-2, even though they do have that Division II win because Jacksonville State was a bunch of bums and pulled out last minute. You punks. Go to the FBS, you knuckleheads. That's my theme of the thing. But yeah, 2-1 versus the top 10. Name another program that has that outside of Montana State. You can't. So that's where I'm going to say Eastern Washington will get the number 6 seed.
Okay. Yep. I mean, quality, strength of schedule and all that. I'm going to pound the table here for our outside of the big 3 stuff in the 6 to 8 range, especially ETSU. I think you could justify them at any of these spots. That simple rating system, I get that Vanderbilt is more trash than Kylor's ever said the word trash in his life, but that is an FBS win. They would be 10-1, and now they're starting to fall behind these 2 lost teams.
They'd be 9-1 though. That's the difference because they also have a win over Virginia Wise or something like that.
Okay. Yep.
So they're 9-1. So they would have one more Division I win than Eastern Washington, but also they wouldn't have any wins over anyone in the top 10. That's where I favor Eastern Washington. Their strength of schedule will be light years ahead of ETSU. That's the reason why I picked Eastern Washington as a 6 instead of some of those, because we've seen the committee favorite people who have actual really strong strengths of schedules and who have big wins. Eastern Washington still has big wins.
Okay, Eastern Washington, place them there at the 6. Okay, now it gets intense with number 7. And Jamie and Kylor, I didn't even give myself picks here, so all I got to do is defend my stuff. Jamie, here is number 7. Who is the 7th seed? Go. What do you got?
I believe if we had the people watching, we could see them. I think we would get a big rousing cheer, and I'm going to get one from you. I'm going to go with the team that boasts the best 2-headed running back tandem in the FCS. Clearly, yeah. South Dakota State. Just kidding. It is East Tennessee State at the number 7 seed.
Bucks.
That Quay Holmes, Jacob Sailors. I can't say their names enough. That defense, I can't defend it enough. That is your 7 seed. That team could give a lot of teams problems. I'm going to go East Tennessee State at 7.
Awesome. At 10-1. And you look in the past in terms of the committee, they're going to love undefeated versus the FCS. They're going to love an FBS win. Oh, not undefeated versus FCS, but add that FBS win in there, and then one small little loss to the FCS. I think East Tennessee State right there. I think you can justify them anywhere in that 5 to 8 range. I think you guys made enough valid points for them not to be 5 or 6, but I'm glad that they got a seed in here. Hell of a program and a hell of a year so far for them. Kylor, do you feel more content about them at 7 than my arguments I made for them in that 5 to 6?
I like them at 7 or 8, definitely more than 5 to 6, because right now they're still lacking any top 10 caliber wins. So are you really a top 10 caliber team if you do not hit the top 10 or have played anyone in the top 10? That's kind of my thing. So at 10-1 or 9-1 versus the FCS or, versus Division I, that Vanderbilt win's huge. 20 points wins against Vanderbilt. You're going to get some credibility. 9-1 versus Division I opponents, you're probably going to get seeded. They just don't have the strength of schedule, but I like them anywhere between 7 and 8. So I have no flack for Jamie Williams putting them at 7. I think they deserve a seed with what they've been able to do. That's where my head's at.
All right. And hey, you got us there, Jamie. Good pick. East Tennessee State in at 7. And the finale for being able to sit home on Thanksgiving, eat a good meal, relax, sit on the couch, enjoy some football, maybe do some Black Friday shopping. You got that opportunity if you got to buy. And now there's only one team left that's going to get one. And that final pick goes to Mr. Kylor Neal. So, Kylor, crush people's hearts and make some people very happy. Who is our 8th and final seed? And allow us an opportunity to push back on you, of course.
So here's the deal. We have to look at a team who we are projecting to go 9-2 overall, who went 8-0 in the Big Sky, who has another 2 top 10 wins, lost to an FBS team in a close game, and then a loss in week 2 when they were still trying to figure out their QB system. Right now, I think Sac State at 9-1 versus the FCS or versus Division I, basically, they're going to have just as good of an argument, if not better, than East Tennessee State because they've actually beaten 2 top 10 teams in Montana and UC Davis when it's all said and done when we're predicting these things. So that's where I would have had East Tennessee State a little bit lower. But if Sacramento State takes care of business, 8-0 in the Big Sky Conference champs, plus they haven't lost since September or to an FCS team. They've only lost to one, and it was September 11th. That carries some weight. So I think Sacramento State, if you're looking at anything, yes, they avoided Eastern Washington. Yes, they avoided Montana State. They still beat Montana. They still beat UC Davis in this hypothetical situation. I think it's safe to assume that the Big Sky is going to get 3 seeds if all of this happens.
Your justification was really good. I was hoping to just completely annihilate you somehow. But here's a huge factor with Sacramento State because this will be the one people get worked up over. And I was kind of advocating for UT Martin to maybe be that A seed. With 10 FCS wins, they're 10-1 with an FBS loss. Strength of schedule for Sacramento is going to be 32nd. And looking down here in our quick notes, if you're looking at my beautiful UT Martin team, they sit with a strength of schedule of 59th. So a little bit better, obviously, for Sacramento State. But you're right. If they win over UC Davis and Montana, and UC Davis and Montana both end up in the field, that's 2 playoff wins in the regular season. And there are not a lot of teams left with quality wins across the board, even to get to 2. FBS loss won't hurt them in Cal. The loss to UNI does hurt. So you're just like, ugh. But is a loss to UNI, who's going to be 6-5, so it'll be above 500. They're that last Valley team not able to make it. Is that really your killer when you've just shown improvement? I like it, Kylor. You're not going to get a lot of pushback for me there. I think Sac State is a good pick. I think the committee will value them really well. I'm glad to see that there was no consideration. I think I keep seeing Missouri State a lot in the comments. People are really wanting Missouri State. Let's do a little comparison, guys, here. Now, the Massey rating strength of schedule for Missouri State is 2nd right now. So huge strength of schedule for Missouri State. Very tough. Much better than Sac State's. They lost to NDSU and Youngstown. So NDSU, of course, we expect them to lose to them. They lost FBS to Oklahoma State. Youngstown's a terrible loss. That is an awful loss. Youngstown is so bad. It was like watching high schoolers yesterday when they played North Dakota State. That is a horrendous loss. UNI, they had to beat them last second. Their quality win is over South Dakota. So there's one team that Missouri State beat that's in the playoff field. Sac State has 2. Sac State has 1 extra win. Southern Illinois has a way worse loss with Youngstown. The only advantage that Missouri State has is that their strength of schedule was tougher. But is it so much? Yeah, I like the pick there.
Is it so much tougher than saying Sacramento State is 2-0 versus top 10 teams?
Yeah, so I think that's
their only FCS loss was over 2 months ago. So a little bit different.
Yep. Travis Wintercrust makes a good point here. Yeah, one Valley team when the Big Fluffy stops, teams don't play each other. I don't think Big Fluffy still is a tagline for that conference anymore. They brought in some good defensive teams. But yeah, there is the rotational stuff, and maybe that gets exposed. We don't know. But remember, this is how the committee is going to look at it from the simple rating systems and what's on paper. This isn't just about they're not gamblers. The committee are not gamblers. They are not gambling or trying to project who's going to win. They're going to look at current evidence, and everything outside of strength of schedule massively favors Sacramento State.
Yeah, this is not me saying I think Sacramento State is the 8th best team.
Right.
I'm saying based off of what the committee has done historically, it is going to be pretty hard to leave Sacramento State out there if you're putting East Tennessee State in there, if you're putting Eastern Washington in there, if you're putting Villanova in there, if you're putting James Madison in there, right? It's going to be pretty hard to leave them out of there, which, of course, I think Villanova, James Madison, Eastern Washington all deserve to be around Sac State. I kind of thought Missouri State deserves a bid. I think the 8th seed in mine is going to be between an East Tennessee State, a Missouri State, a UT Martin, and then what I had as Kennesaw prior to this whole thing going down, where we're saying Kennesaw's losing to Monmouth. So I think that 8th seed has about 4 teams that are pushing to try and get that. But yeah, that's going to be the difference maker.
Cool. Mr. Williams, we're going to let you go to work. Guys, if you're paying attention here, stick around for our last kind of 15 minutes here. Jamie is on Bracket HQ right now. I'm going to remove him from the screen. Jamie, hit us in the private chat when you're ready. And what's going to happen is Jamie is going to compile the bracket together right now. And while that's happening, we're going to respond to your guys' comments. So feel free to throw all the shade at us right now and get really upset and tell us how dumb we are. We love that sort of reaction. We're not afraid of a little bit of heat. And we're just going to kind of go through it while Jamie builds the bracket. So, which is good. So playoff seeds, Sam Houston, number 1, Montana State, your 2, NDSU 3, James Madison 4, Villanova at the 5, those Eagles of Eastern Washington at the 6, East Tennessee State, your 7, and the final 8 seed going to Sacramento State. Kylor, teams, if let's say Sacramento State doesn't exist, poof, they're just gone. It's magic, and it's a 23-team playoff. Congratulations. What do you think? Do you think it's Missouri State? Would you think that would be UT Martin? Like, you can't pick Sac State. Who would you want to put in there?
Yeah, I think Missouri State would deserve it. UT Martin, look at the rest of their conference. One of the next best teams is 3-7 or whatever. Like, UT Martin, they do not deserve a bid with their current conference they're in. The OVC looks horrible compared to the last few years. They have regressed night and day. So if Sacramento State didn't exist, I think you do have to give it to Missouri State. Now, I just want to comment with Brandon's Owens teams, because they said, oh, but they beat the team that Sac State lost to. Cool. You know what? UNI or Missouri State also lost to what'd you say? Youngstown State. You know how many crap teams beat Youngstown State? Everyone besides Missouri State. So I don't think that's as good as an argument as you think it is, Brandon, especially when it happens 2.5 months ago. And it's a completely different team now running a different quarterback. But that's my one argument. If you are only leaning on the team that beat UNI, well, guess what? Youngstown State beat Missouri State, and Youngstown State is not beating Sacramento State by any means. They're not beating any team by any means in the playoff field. So that's kind of the big difference. But yeah, if Sacramento State wasn't around, I do think Missouri State would be that team.
And do you, UT Martin though, think about the past. Would it shock you at all for them to be a seed? I was tweeting about this earlier. Do you think it would be crazy for UT Martin to be a seed? Because if Jacksonville State was 10-1 in the OVC, how many times have they given them a nod? Like, do you think the OVC has regressed so bad that the committee recognizes that? Or could you see them doing something crazy and putting them in there? Or do you think there's enough Power 3 teams that have done well enough to justify things? What do you think about that, man? Like, is there a way UT Martin possibly gets in, or do you think the committee, no way?
My one counteraction to the Jacksonville State being in the Ohio Valley and getting the seed when they're undefeated for the FCS. Normally, the Ohio Valley at least had 2 teams that you're willing to say, 2 to 3 teams that you're like, these are playoff eligible teams. Outside of UT Martin, SEMO is next best in their conference at 3-7. Austin P is 5-5, but they're also only 3-2 in the conference. There is 0 teams outside of UT Martin that even deserve to be looked at for the Ohio Valley. Now, UT Martin, they have a win over Samford, who everyone from the SoCon is saying that is such an amazing win because Samford just lost by 20 to Florida. Who cares? NAU beat an FBS team. NAU is not looking at a playoff field. So, yes, I'm talking crap to all you SoCon fans. But UT Martin's best win is Jacksonville State. That is their best win. You also know who has a best win over Jacksonville State and beat them by more? Kennesaw State. So if we have Kennesaw State out of the playoffs completely in this hypothetical, why the heck would UT Martin deserve a bid when they have a closer win against their best win being Jacksonville State when Kennesaw blew the crap out of Jacksonville State and they're not even in the field? That's my big takeaway.
Very interesting. Looking at our comments here, Kylor, got some people coming in. After Montana takes down MSU, Grizz are 5 or 6 seed. So let's do that. Like, we hypothetically picked Montana State to win, but what if the Grizz win? What does that shake up for you here? And guys, if you're wondering what's going on with our discussion, Jamie, once again, is in the background right now, compiling the geography and building the bracket. We're going to reveal that here to you sooner than later. And Jamie, no pressure. Take your time, my man. Kylor, what do you think if Montana actually wins that game?
If this hypothetical exists, and you're saying Montana is a 5 or 6 seed, then that means you think Eastern Washington and Sac State are a 4 and 3 seed. It's not going to happen. Montana State will be seated behind an Eastern Washington, behind a Sac State, because the resumes are similar and they lost to those teams. So at best, if Montana State beats Montana, or if Montana beats Montana State, they're probably looking at an 8 seed max. If they lose, they're completely out of the seeds. I don't think they jump in Eastern Washington. I don't think they jump above a Sac State, and I don't think anyone realistically is putting Eastern Washington or Sac State as a top 5 seed.
And interesting. It's the Big Sky. Like, there has been that rotational scheduling, which gives them a little bit of favoritism, but the committee's going to look at it. They look at it. So, Tommy Toll here. I wish SFA got in as a last seed or to travel to Sam Houston. Playing them at home instead of Reliant would have been awesome. So, Tommy, obviously we did a lot of research here. We had these teams broken down. When you look at Stephen F. Austin, they had an FBS loss to Texas Tech. They lost to Sam Houston, and they lost to Jacksonville State. They also had a Division II win over Lincoln University. So if they win next week, they'll be 7-3 in the committee's eyes instead of 8-3. They'll have 7 Division I wins, and their quality win is over Eastern Kentucky, who we don't think is going to slip into the playoffs. Their biggest ding, I would say, is their Massey rating, which is the strength of schedule, is currently 78th. It's one of the strength of schedule things. It's pretty accurate. So 78th is a very low strength of schedule. You're going to have 3 losses with only 7 wins. So that's going to be really tough to overcome. I think if you had beat Jacksonville State, I think SFA gets in. But did you remotely consider Stephen F. Austin this year, Kylor, or were they kind of off the radar when you saw the 30-team list?
I think.
Oh, Tommy, you're covered. Come on now. The South, you guys are. The AQ7 was not that bad. You're not the OVC or some of the others this year.
They definitely weren't as good as we all anticipated, right? We had high hopes for the AQ7 with the teams that they brought in. Didn't live up to the hype. Especially when you have teams like UCA losing to Missouri Valley. You have a couple of these other teams losing to non-playoff caliber teams or playoff caliber teams from other conferences. So the AQ7 wasn't as strong as we all hoped. But I have SFA as in my last 4 in or last 4 out. I think the committee is going to talk about SFA. Will they bring them in? I have no clue. But SFA is going to be mentioned in the committee whenever they're picking their teams. I'm leaning towards they're going to be one of the last 4 out because of that D2 win. When you're having 7 wins against the FCS, no big wins outside of Eastern Kentucky, which right now Matt just kind of already said it. We're alluding that they don't make the playoffs. Which team are you jumping that has 7+ wins out of the FCS? I don't see many that you're going to be able to say our resume is better than theirs. That's where I think they're going to be on the outside looking in. But SFA, I mean, they're going to be mentioned. They're going to be talked about. But that's about it.
All right. So good discussion, Kylor, just between you and me a little bit. Jamie is back, guys. It's time for the finale of this episode. Almost pushing 2 hours. This is great. So we hope you guys have enjoyed it. Thanks for sticking with us this entire time. It is now time for the bracket reveal. We use Bracket HQ, a bracket building website, to do this. I'm going to share that screen right now. Huge disclaimer. Before the comments come in, we'll probably have to remind folks. This website, it makes us seed everything, okay, right? Obviously, not everybody is seeded, okay? We all know this. It's just that you have to use seeds to place them on this website. There is only 1 through 8 are seeded. Okay.
Who's team 16, Jamie?
Yeah, who's team 16? Here we go.
Did I miss one?
Oh, that's... We'll get her put in there. Jamie, I'll give you a
team
little...
16 is probably going to win it all. We have no clue who they are, but they look really good. Okay.
Oh, we got C-Law there at number 18. I got you, Jamie. Hit me up in the private chat and I'll punch it in there and we'll get her down. Looks like
this thing went all goofy on me.
It definitely did. Don't worry, guys. Hey, this has been
not the matchups I gave.
This has been pretty flawless. Whoever's playing Mercer, my man, would be your team 16.
Yeah, Mercer. I've got Southeast Louisiana in there twice. Something goofy happened. So Mercer's playing Southeastern Louisiana.
Mm-hmm. Jamie, I'll let you hop back in there, my
Yeah,
man.
let me do that.
You got it. I'm going to log it out.
This is why we are amateurs. No.
Yeah, 100%.
Hey, let's talk about Dustin Helton's point. You know, SFA, their 3 losses were by a total of 11 points. I understand it. They're ahead of schedule. Their losses are not bad losses. But also, you played Sam Houston when they were down a quarterback and they were kind of resting people. But again, you lost to Jacksonville State. You have a D2 win. Your only good win right now is against Central Arkansas, who's not a playoff team, right? They're really hovering around 500. And then EKU, who is a potential playoff team, but we just don't think that they're going to be. I think SFA, they have a lot of promise for the future. I just don't see, again, with their resume with 7-3 versus Division I, how they jump above maybe some of the other teams with 7+ wins. That's my only comment. But again, I like SFA and what they've done. You see my beer right here. This is Axe Hat. I'm rooting for the Lumberjacks. This is different because it's, you know, Valhalla stuff. But
Yeah.
hey, I'm rooting for anyone with a hatchet. I just think, like I said, you're going to be in the committee's discussion. I'm just not sure if it's going to be on the inside of it. I think it's going to be on the outside.
True. I don't know who gave us a thumbs down, but yeah, we finally got a thumbs down this pod. We shared Word documents and we updated things throughout. Oh, we had one technology blurb, so darn, that's okay. We'll be all right. So Jamie continuing to adjust and fix the bracket in the back there. Hey, just think about how much those committee members got to shift things around on a board, realize they placed something wrong, look at the geography. Kylor, what is that again? Some of those basic rules that you mentioned for what the committee has to follow. They seed 8 teams, and then what happens then from like avoiding rematches and stuff like that?
Yeah, so in the first round, what they really try their best to do, and this is not an end-all be-all, but they try to do their best to limit travel costs because really the NCAA is paying for all this, right? Teams that are hosting, they're bidding, they're really truly paying for everything, but the NCAA is actually paying for the bidding or for the travel costs. So what they try and do to save money so then they don't go broke is they do a 500-mile rule. So that 500-mile rule exists. The only difference is in that first round, what they do is if you've played a team already in that first round, like throughout the regular season, who they potentially may match you up with, they're not going to match you up with them. So like for the Big Sky purposes, let's say UC Davis and Sacramento State hypothetically are not seeded. They are only 10 miles apart, right? You would think they would match up with each other. But since they played in the regular season, what they would do is send, let's say, UC Davis to Montana because that's going to be the closest team to Montana, who maybe now that's outside of the 500-mile rule, so maybe they'll actually plug a Valley team in there. But the difference is they're going to do their best to make it as short distance travel as possible. They'll rank the 8 seeds. The first round, it's all going to be who bids on what. But yeah, the difference is they're going to try their best to do it as regional as possible, as long as you have not played a certain team in the regular season throughout that first round.
Good stuff. Quick comment before we go on. This guy says I lost credibility because of the Cowboys helmet in the back. Hey, they have 7 wins, so they would have been discussed for an FCS playoff team. So that's good. All right. All jokes aside, Jamie, I think we're all looking good, my man. Let's look at the bracket, the teams we put in, the seeding again. Guys, we did not seed the teams that are in round 1. The website makes us do that. So ignore seeds 17 and 24. It means absolutely nothing. Focus on what Kylor just said about the 500-mile rule and geography and other factors. So Jamie, right here we have Sam Houston as the 1 seed. We have Sacramento State as the 8 seed. That's pretty standard. Talk a little bit about Mercer playing C-Law in round 1 to go to Sam Houston and USD playing UC Davis. That seems like a little bit of a hike, but give me your thought process, my man.
Yeah, so you got a cluster of Northeast teams, a couple of Mid-Atlantic teams, some Tennessee teams. So Mercer in Southeast Louisiana. Mercer's in Georgia, so it made the most sense to send them to Southeastern Louisiana or Southeast Louisiana to Mercer, depending on the bids. Probably at Strawberry Stadium, and then that regionally kind of matches with Sam Houston. Where it gets a little bit difficult on the travel, and you'll see it as we go through, is unfortunately you got a few teams in the Midwest and a few teams out west. So they're going to have to face each other. And here we've got South Dakota playing UC Davis. My guess is UC Davis just strokes a check. They get a home game. And to me, they kind of anticipate that Davis may win that. Sacramento State is the easy portion to finish off that quadrant there.
That reminds me of, I forget the year, it was a few years back, Northern Iowa, they ended up in the quarterfinals at Sacramento State. So they were in a scenario where they had to go way out west. And that's because there are a lot of Big Sky teams this year. There's a lot more in that East and South and that Midwest upper area in comparison to just way out in Big Sky country, right? So I don't see any issues there. That looks good to me. Kylor, any glaring errors for rules or anything? Looks pretty solid, right?
No, I just actually think since in this hypothetical, we have 5 Missouri Valley teams, 5 Big Sky teams, they're going to pair the teams that didn't play each other, who are not seeded. So I actually do think UC Davis is going to go to Montana in this hypothetical scenario, but that's about the only knock I'll have. If they don't go to Montana, then yes, a Valley team's coming to the West Coast, or
Awesome.
vice versa, a West Coast team's coming to the Valley.
Gotcha. Yep. Something to pay attention to. Not a perfect science, but we hope it's good. So, all right, guys, there you go. Villanova is the 5 seed. James Madison is the 4. Looks like Jamie, our awesome bracket builder, has put Rhode Island and Sacred Heart matching up against each other. The winner to go to Villanova, and Holy Cross and Monmouth facing off. The winner to go to James Madison. So this seems a little CAA heavy, but it falls under the rule where there can be 3, right? There can be 3 from the same conference in the same corner. There can't be 4. So you're in the safety zone here, Jamie. Talk about it. What do you got, man?
This is kind of your northeast quadrant here. All of those teams, you put a circle around them. Those teams there, the 6, are probably the close proximity. And that actually, Holy Cross, Monmouth to James Madison, those 3 teams are actually an exact duplicate of the 2019 playoff. And then, Rhode Island, Sacred Heart traveling to Villanova. I know people are going to say, oh, look, CA gets a easy road. Then they got to face each other. So, and hey, upsets can happen, but if you look at what the committee will have to do regionally, this is what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I so far so good, man. I'm the furthest thing from the expert on here. There's really great guys out there like Jason Grooms and others who I've got this down to a complete science. But to me, this is looking really solid. Kylor, look good or any tweaking?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Kevin Marshall was going to give some CA flack because they have definitely an easy road to the semis. One of the CA teams from this little bracket will go to the semis. They do have an easy road, but guess what? It is because of this regional thing. If you don't want to do regional, the NCAA, then seed all 124. But as of right now, this looks super realistic for that side of the bracket, and it is an easy road for the semifinals for one of the CA teams. It is what it is. It happens.
Awesome. Looking good. All right, guys. So let's keep it rolling here. Those dang Bison, they're always in the playoffs, it seems. NDSU, the 3 seed. Oh, was it a fumble? Was it not? Eastern Washington, the 6th seed. Of course, they still care about that. And behind them, guys, we've got a few matchups here. This looks like an extremely difficult side of the bracket. Good luck to Davidson. Southern Illinois and Davidson facing off to go play NDSU, and Montana and SDSU to go to Eastern Washington. Jamie, give us your thoughts here, man.
I know this is this quadrant of death, and I didn't see anything else I could really do. I mean, I guess theoretically I could send Davidson and Mercer together, Southern Illinois and Southeastern Louisiana. It's just that's how it came out. Montana, South Dakota State, Eastern Washington. Gosh, my Eagles friends are going to shoot me if this happens, but I didn't see any way around this quadrant here. I mean, when you look at what we've already seen, how do you go anywhere else but unfortunately what I put together?
Yeah, when we zoom out here and you guys see the whole thing, maybe you'll wrap it around. But yeah, if you are anybody here would say the committee, oh, here's the committee trying to give the Bison the toughest route, or they're trying to make it tough on Eastern or something. But it always seems like there's one corner that's brutal. And again, this is because of geography, right? This is because of the rules they're bound by. If you could seed the whole thing, like Kylor said, this stuff is different. But that again, this looks pretty good. Kylor, any knocks on it, my man?
No, we're going to get this side of a bracket, especially when you have the playoffs is so filled with Big Sky and Missouri Valley, right? 5 teams each. This is going to be an aspect of regional aspect where you are going to battle each other. It is what it is. The only difference, like I said, is I think what you'll have more realistic is probably a UC Davis going to Montana, and then maybe a South Dakota going to a Southern Illinois or something like that, or vice versa. They're going to have a couple of those Missouri Valley teams. and a couple of those Big Sky teams that did not play each other go against each other in the first round. But if that doesn't happen, South Dakota State's probably actually going to Montana. I don't know if that's what you had. I think that's what you're showing. But yeah, it's going to be Big Sky, Missouri heavy for the first 2 rounds. It just is.
Yeah, that's so far so good there, Jamie. You've definitely got your skills down when it comes to this stuff. And here's your final little corner, and then we'll show the entire thing. East Tennessee State, your 7 seed. Looks like they're going to have some competition with Chattanooga and UT Martin coming in. Incarnate Word and Missouri State facing off in round 1 for the right to go to Montana State. So, Jamie, a little explanation here. This one as well doesn't look like you're breaking any rules for geography and or conferences. What do you got, man?
That top 3 right there, I think that was the easiest 3 to put together. It's just 3 Tennessee teams. They kind of got to go together. And Incarnate Word, Missouri State, regionally first round. That's fairly close. I know it's probably not 500 miles because Texas is 7,444 miles itself. But somebody's got to go to Montana State from there. So that's kind of what I'm looking at.
Awesome. Kyler, look good or what do you think?
No issues with this one. This is probably how it's going to look. I think, like I said, I think a lot of them are going to be pretty accurate if the teams come in like we say they are. I think the bracket's going to look pretty good to what Jamie said. I just think, like I said, probably you're going to get a Missouri Valley versus Missouri Valley matchup that didn't play each other and a Big Sky versus Big Sky matchup. Other than that, I think it's a pretty realistic bracket on what could happen if these teams that we're saying is going to make the playoffs make the playoffs. If there's a couple teams that don't make the playoffs, then of course this bracket changes completely. But I think Jamie did a pretty good job following the rules as best as he can.
Yeah, if you guys are looking at this on YouTube, it's pretty easy to see. But however, if you're listening to this on a replay with our FCS Fans Nation podcast section, somehow I just zoomed in way too much. But taking a look at it, guys, Sam Houston and Sac State, they're seated in their same corner. The seedings don't matter. Mercer and Selah will go to play Sam Houston. South Dakota UC Davis to Sacramento State. You have Rhode Island and Sacred Heart, the right to go play the 5 seed Villanova. Holy Cross and Monmouth would travel to James Madison. SIU and Davidson going to North Dakota State. Montana, South Dakota State going to Eastern. Chattanooga and UT Martin would go to the 7 seed ETSU. And Incarnate Word and Missouri State would travel to Montana State, who is the 2 seed. Okay, final question before we break it down, guys. If this was the bracket, who's in Frisco? Who is in Frisco? You got to pick 2 teams. If I looked at this bracket, I would say give me Sam Houston to get back there up top with Bowers. I don't think there's enough heavy hitters to come in and knock them down at that point. And on the bottom here, boy, am I really going to go chalk? Yeah, I'm going to go chalk. I could see Eastern coming into the Dome and actually getting a win. I'm going to go chalk. I'm going to go Sam Houston and Montana State. I'm going to have that huge cop out if this was the bracket. Jamie, if you had to pick, who would you go with?
I'll be the homer, damn it. James Madison, North Dakota State.
Okay, here we go. Kyler, what do you got, man, if you had to pick? Oh, you're muted there, buddy.
Oh, probably Jackson State versus Dartmouth.
Okay, perfect.
On this one, I actually like JMU on their top side of the bracket. And then on the bottom, you know what? I'm going to say I don't think actually North Dakota State matches up well with the Montana State because of their offense. It's trash. So, we'll go James Madison, Montana State.
JMU, Montana State. So, all right. So that's just completely hypothetical, guys. Lots of football to play. But we are just coming up on, oh my goodness, 2 hours. We had 70 plus people stick with us because people love mock things, mock NFL drafts, mock playoff brackets. They love seeding, all those things. FCS Fans Nation, thank you so much for joining us as some of the comments come in here for predictions for champions. Thank you so much for joining us on our mock draft special. This is always a good time. Hopefully we enlighten you a little bit. Once again, we're not trying to completely predict the perfect teams. We tried to get your head wrapped around on seeding and strength of schedules and what these teams' resumes look like. So hopefully you can take some of that away and argue in the bars here over the next week or so. So thank you so much for joining us at the FCS Fans Nation podcast. Make sure to subscribe to us on Facebook. any podcast platform, and of course, YouTube. Click that subscribe button, drop us a rating. Kylor, Jamie, thank you so much for spending your Sunday evening with us, cutting out of some NFL games. To FCS Fans Nation, next week you get the real answer. Join us for a live stream and live reaction of the playoff committee selections while they announce them next Sunday. So we're going to stream again. You'll actually get some actual analysis instead of some talking heads talking about FBS playoffs while they announce FCS teams. So FCS Fan Nation, that's all we have for now. Enjoy a beer, enjoy your Sunday night. Have a great week. We'll catch more action next Saturday, and we will see you guys when we finally find out who is officially in the playoffs. Boom.
Thank you for listening to the FCS Fans Nation podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe to this podcast on your preferred listening platform, whether it's Apple, Spotify, Google, or even YouTube. And make sure to follow our FCS Fans Nation social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for listening to the premier podcast for FCS football. Boom.